All right. And we are off today. Narayan Higgins. Did I get that right?
Yeah, you're saying it perfect. I usually I usually tell people it's like Ryan with a "nuh." Nuh, no, right. Anyway.
Yeah. When I was like looking at the name, I'm like, I don't know if I'm going to get this mixed up with mine a little bit or not. We'll see what happens. But I guess to start things off, why don't you tell everybody a little bit about what it is that you're doing right now, and then we'll kind of just jump into things.
Sure. I run a cow sanctuary called Krishna Cow Sanctuary here in Hawaii on the Big Island. I'm currently caring for 65 cows. What I do, I don't own any property myself, and that might sound crazy. How does this guy have 65 cows? He doesn't own any land. I find people who want to have their land maintained, or they were already paying to maintain it using mowers or poison or whatever the different methods people use to keep the grass down here. And instead I set up electric fencing and I bring the cows, and the cows graze on rotation, which is really good for the soil and it's really good for the environment as well. And the people are also saving money on their taxes, so it's a win-win-win. I'm winning, the cows winning, they're winning. And we also we rescue cows too. And I also have a few cows that I milk, which a lot of people take exception with. They're like, wait, you're a cow sanctuary but you're milking cows, what is that about? So maybe we can get into that a little later,
Yeah.
because a lot of people have this misconception about it's exploitation if you're milking the cows. But I'd actually love to get into that at some point.
Absolutely. We will definitely touch on that. Dude, I cannot wait to get into this stuff. I've been watching some of your videos, like what was it, the GoFundMe video that you had, it wasn't
Yeah.
GoFundMe, it was a crowdsource or something like that.
I put it on, whenever I do a fundraiser, I put it on a bunch of different things, because for some reason some people don't want to use this or use that, so I just do multiple. Yeah.
Yeah, man, I can't wait to get into the details of this, but I'd like to start off with what was your path, like the path that you were on before you switched things up? Because I know you were going a pretty different route before you tapped.
Yeah, definitely. I was going to University of Hawaii at Manoa for business.
Okay.
I had a full ride academic scholarship, actually, where I was getting paid to go to class there, and I still couldn't do it, man. I was like, this is I was like, wait, how much am I getting paid? Oh, I don't know if it's worth it. And I just, it wasn't for me. I'm sure a lot of people have a similar experience, and I'm sure a lot of people have great experience, going to college. But for me, it was just so slow and boring. And I think I might have told you, but we have to go to class and take general education, where we're learning like things I already learned in high school or things that I'm never going to use in life. And to me, it was just like, I got to get out of here. And I wanted to drop out for a long time, but I didn't really have the guts to do it until Steve Jobs died, the Apple guy. And he died, and everyone at the business college, because he was like one of their idols, I guess. They're all like kind of like, one teacher was crying. He was like, we lost a good man today. And I mean, I'm sure he was a good guy, but it's like, come on, man, you don't know who that is.
You didn't know him. Come on.
No, man. But so they were reading the really cool speech that Steve Jobs gave as the MIT, I think it was MIT commencement speech. And the teacher's reading the speech to the class, and I'm barely paying attention, man. I'm looking up at the clock like, yo, I need to get out of here. This is killing me. And then, but I heard something in the speech, and what Steve Jobs had said was, if you're in a room where you're looking at the clock constantly, you're in the wrong room. You need to get out of there. And I heard that, like, that's almost like the only thing I heard in the speech. And I was just like, whoa. And I didn't even wait for the class to end. I was like, hey, if this is like the business god, you can't get out of this room, I'm out of here. And so I got up, I got out. And I was increasingly getting more interested in Krishna conscious philosophy. That's where the Krishna comes in our name, Krishna Cow Sanctuary.
Okay.
It's a really deep philosophy with a lot of facets, but one of the major facets of it is to try and live off the land, to live simply, and to take care of cows is a real big part of it. And
Okay.
so I moved to the Big Island with those intentions, to grow food, to do it organically, to do it sustainably, to do regenerative agriculture, which is even a little more than permaculture. It means taking land that was misused and turning it back into fertile land in a sustainable way that goes on and creates fertility into the future.
Yeah. Therein lies the awesome shirt that you're wearing.
Oh yeah. So I get more comments about this shirt than any other shirt I have, man. Everyone's like, yeah, like strangers at the store, like, cool shirt, man. Which I think that's one of the reasons why they got bought up by Bayer, Monsanto and Bayer, like the medicine company. It's like petrochemical agriculture poison company and the medicine company, Big Pharma. Perfect.
With our powers combined, we can ruin the world. Oh shit, man. Well, how did you find the Krishna religious, like spiritual? Well, it's more of a spiritual thing, right?
Oh, totally. Yeah, it's my dad was actually a disciple of the monk who brought it from India. His name is Prabhupada. Not my dad. The monk's name is Prabhupada, and my dad was a disciple of his. But I never really got into the philosophy as a kid. I did good in school. I was really into the sciences and stuff like that, and I was like, oh, that's just some old, just superstitious mumbo jumbo, man. I'm like, I believe in evolution, and I was an atheist. Actually, I didn't even believe in God at all, meaning like I thought, oh, life just came from nothing, it evolved into what it is now, and that's just how, I can't believe these people believe these stupid stories.
Yeah.
And then and I was real adamant about that too. And then I had this argument when I was, I don't know, 17 or 18, where I was arguing with a Hare Krishna devotee. That's what they're called, devotees. And he's saying, well, where do you think life comes from? I go, what do you mean, where does life come from? It's like, some chemicals and like a lightning bolt hit or something. And then I was at least self-aware enough to realize, like, hey, that doesn't make any sense. And then, even though I was saying it, I had no real conviction. I could tell. And then he says, he gave me this. This is a common argument they use in their philosophy. He says, all living beings come from another living being. Like, you have a mother and a father. I have a mother and a father. Every tree, seed, right? Even every little protozoa bacteria comes from another one, asexual or sexual reproduction. But there's never been any observation, which is what science is, of a living entity just coming into existence and going on and procreating from there. Right. And if that were the case, like if life did start from non-life at some point in history, then we would be seeing that now. We'd be able to like observe, oh, hey, look, all these bacteria are coming into life here from nothing, but everything's actually has a parent. And so I said, hey, that's a provable thing, and it hasn't been disproven. Right. And so I was just like, oh man, well, you kind of got me there, but and then logically that goes to follow that life, if life only comes from life, then it must have always existed. That that they couldn't have never not existed and then exist now. And then to me, with all the things like asteroids and meteors and all the different things that happen in the universe, I couldn't imagine that life would always have existed on its own as this crazy phenomena without some type of intelligence kind of guiding it or doing something behind it. And so the other thing for me, man, I was always like, how could one religion be right and all the religions be wrong? And God just lets everyone be stupid and ignorant and only one's right. That was like, how that doesn't make any sense. Yeah. But in the Krishna conscious philosophy, they say that actually all religions are speaking about the same God and the same core principles. And it's just for different cultures, which they say time, place, and circumstance, the message is a little different. Mm-hmm. So that those people at that time can understand it. But ultimately, it's the same message. And that's one of my favorite things, is actually studying other religions and finding those similarities, that the things that kind of like link us all together.
Dude, that's That's the trippy part, man. When you start looking across different religions, you're like, man, a lot of this shit is pretty similar when you get down to the bare bones of it.
Oh, totally. You know, there's different cultural stuff, obviously, but the core, and that's so that was really got me into the Krishna philosophy. I was like, well, hey, that makes sense. And there's other systems out there that say the same thing, but they just put it in such a way that it really, you know, I really connected with that. And the idea, what they call it is bhakti, is the core principle of every religion, and that just means loving devotion to a higher power. And so that essence of bhakti is actually in every religion. And Prabhupada himself, he said that you can change from a Christian, a Muslim, a Judaism, whatever, but you still are, you know, professing a love for a higher power, and that's the core thing, you know. And so I got into that, really got into it. And I, when I, you know, the common theme throughout the literature, there's tons of books. It's really like highbrow philosophy. And at the same time, it's a real simple practice. The main practice is just chanting, which you can do for free on your own with friends, just chanting these ancient mantras. And so I really like that too. It wasn't like, hey, give us all your money and follow up. You know, it was like, hey, here's a practice that you can do yourself. And it's all about having a personal connection with a teacher and with God, you know, just you. And it's just, what, you know, there is an institution nowadays within the Hare Krishna movement, but the whole thing was, you know, it doesn't rely on an institution, not like the Catholic Church or something. But nowadays it's even the same, you know, it's whenever men get too involved in something, it's usually like,
we got to do it this way, and I got the perfect idea for that. Yeah.
But anyway, and one of the main things throughout the books is that you should, is the philosophy you said was simple living, high thinking,
yeah.
Meaning live simply, but really consider, why am I here? Why am I in this body? Why am I able to even ask these questions? Who am I? And those are the questions that they call it the purpose of human life. Because when we believe in reincarnation, and so when you're in other species of life, you're kind of just living your day to day, trying to survive. And most humans are living that way nowadays too.
Yeah.
But the difference between human life and animal life is when you're in the human form, you can actually think these questions. Why am I here? Who am I? Am I this body? Am I this flesh and blood? Like, where did I come from?
Yeah.
And so the main purpose of human life is the chance to ask those questions and seek answers.
Gotcha. That's cool, man. That's real cool. How long from when you started to go down that path before you started to get this idea of this cow sanctuary?
So I moved out to Big Island. It was, you know, I probably like really got into philosophy when I was like 18. I went to college for 2.5 years, and I came to the Big Island in 2012. So that was about 8 years ago.
Mm-hmm.
And I was like, oh, I'm gonna grow all my own food. I'm gonna live off the land like a jungle person, you know. And I found out real quick, which a lot of people find out, it's a lot harder than you think. You know, there's a reason why human society kind of moved to all these comforts that we have now, is because for a lot of people it's easier. And also at the same time, I didn't have any knowledge about how to actually do it. I was, you know, watching YouTube videos and looking things up. But every climate you're going to try to grow things in is completely different. Especially here on the Big Island, there's so many microclimates. Even like from one area to a few miles away can be totally different because of the lay of the land.
Okay.
And so I for maybe the first year, man, I tried to grow tomatoes, cucumbers, corn, you know, things you would think you're supposed, carrots, and I would find success with them, but I was realizing like, hey, I'm spending all this money on, and I was doing it all organically, but I'm buying organic fertilizer from the store. I'm buying soil from the store. And I'm just like, what, this doesn't really, wait a minute. I just spent like, you know, $10 to grow a handful of tomatoes. Like what am I doing? You know, like this isn't sustainable. This definitely isn't eco-friendly. And so I was kind of like at that stage, like, oh, geez. And then this old this old Hare Krishna guy who lived next door to where I was at. His name was Hari Das, and he actually passed away recently. And I was just reflecting recently on how thankful I was for him, because he told me, he said, "Oh man," I'll do his voice. He said, "Hey, you can't live off the land without a cow." And I'm like, what? What do you? Yeah, and he's like, "Yeah, don't you know you need animal fat and animal protein, and you don't eat meat, so you got to get it through your milk, and milk and butter and cheese and all these things." And then he also said, even if you don't do that, the manure that the cow gives every day, instead of buying fertilizer from the store, you can make your own fertilizer from the cow's manure and the cow's urine. And that was just like a real game changer, because I've been spending so much money on this fertilizer, and then we get these heavy rains here where who knows how much percentage of that fertilizer just washes away.
Oh yeah.
Just like, because we're in a rainforest, man, we get over 100 inches a year here.
Yeah.
And so I need a source of constant fertilizer,
Yeah.
And so I got he lined it up for me to get my first cow, who I still have today. She's 20 years old now. I got her when she was already pretty old, and she's 20 now, and her name's Boomy, and she's a sweetheart. And oh man, it was so funny. The guy whose cow it actually was, who gave me the cow, was like, I was like, "Hey, is she like friendly? Can I pet her? Is she gonna attack me?" Because I knew nothing, man. This is in retrospect, it was kind of irresponsible, but whatever. That's how you get into things, right? And I was like, "Is this cow friendly?" And he goes, "Oh, she's a sweetheart. I've put my baby daughter on her back before." And then he goes, "But every now and then she gets a wild hair in her." And I go, what does that mean? And he goes, and then he left.
You're about to find out.
And so one thing I didn't realize, but I learned very quickly, is that cows are extremely social creatures. They're herd animals. They want to be with the herd. And so I only had this one cow on this field, and I didn't have any fencing or anything. I put up like a little, oh my gosh, man, it was it was like Gilligan's Island. I made like a little fence out of like bamboo and old wood and stuff like that. And I was like, yeah, this should do.
Yeah.
And then sure enough, and especially cows go into heat once a month. And so she, like their heat cycle. And so she would go into heat, and that's especially when she wants to go find a bull or something. So at least once a month, I'd go to check on her, and she'd be completely gone. And I'd be like, "Wow, where'd you go?" And I was living way out in the boonies, man, like dirt road for 10 miles to get where I was.
Wow.
And so I go out there, and it's all forest and dirt road, and I'd be trying to find like a trail, or something on the road, and I'd be going for like, I don't know, a mile, and then I find a poop, and I'd be like, "Oh," I'd get excited, like I'm on the right trail, And then so anyway, she'd get out all the time, and I'd go and I'd find her, and she'd usually be out like 5 miles down the road where these other cows were, like outside their fence, trying to figure out how to get in.
Yeah.
And she was real easy. Like, she'd let me catch her. I'd just like, and I didn't even know about ropes, halters, nothing. So I would just take off my shirt and tie it around her neck and use it as like a little collar. And I'd walk her home. And it was crazy, man, because it's, 5 miles walking there, 5 miles walking back. That's a 10-mile walk.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, and then anyway, that went on for who knows how many months, to when I got to the point where I was like, okay, man, he told me to get a cow, but now I'm spending all my time just trying to find this friggin' cow, But and most people would say like, "Oh, just sell her," or whatever. But part of our philosophy, is that we take care of cows. So I'm like, I can't just sell her. Who knows what's going to happen to her? Someone might eat her. Who knows? I wouldn't feel good doing that. But at the same time, I kind of realized like, hey, she's obviously not happy where she is because she's running away. And I remember, man, this is like such a crazy story. One day I go to check on her. She's gone. I'm like, oh, this again. I go out, I find her miles down the road, walk her back. I repair her fence, which is, man, when I look back now, I'm like, wow, I was a real idiot. But I repair her fence, and I'm like, okay. I talked to her too. I go, okay, Boomy, I'm gonna go get some breakfast or something because I didn't even eat yet. I'm going to be back here in 15 minutes. I'll hang out with you today so you feel more comfortable. I'll be right back. I went and ate something. I came back, and her fence, like the fence was literally obliterated. It looked like a dynamite went off or something. It was just, and she was gone again.
Yeah.
And I was like, dude, I already did this today. I can't do this. I remember I looked up at the sky and I was like, you know, Krishna, that's a name for God in our religious spirituality movement, whatever. I said, Krishna, I'm done with cows. I guess I'm not supposed to have a cow.
Oh my God.
I said, I can't even keep one cow. I'm done with this. Like, I can't do this anymore. I give up. You win. I get message received. And then I went into my little cabin. I just sat down. I started reading the Bhagavad-Gita, which is a integral book in our philosophy. And I'm just like, I was like, I'll just be like a monk or a scholar. I'm not supposed to have a cow. And then so I start reading this book, and I was like, oh, I'm done with that. I'm done with cows. And then within like 5 minutes, this guy pulled into my driveway. And I've never seen this guy before or after this, but he was just like, he yells to me, he's like, hey man, did you lose a cow? And I said, and then we're out in the boonies, so it's very rare for anyone to even show up. And he's like, did you lose a cow? And I'm like, I'm trying to lose a cow.
I've already made a decision to go a little bit different direction. So maybe.
And so anyway, he yells and he goes, dude, I know exactly where she is. Jump in the car. I'll give you a ride. And so I was like, shit, I guess I got this. And so I get in the car. We drive. She's not that far yet because we catch her with the car. And he cuts her off with the car. I jump out. I wrap my shirt around her. I'm like, okay, I caught her. And at the time, man, I was super jungle hippie mode. I didn't even wear shoes, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a gravel road. And it's like actually lava rock gravel road, which it really hurts your feet. You have to walk like hella slow, and like it's like every step is kind of like and the guy's like, I remember the guy goes, oh man, you don't have any shoes? I go, you know, I'm trying to be comfortable being uncomfortable or something like that. Yeah. And he goes, hey man, here, take my shoes. And he kicks his shoes off and gives me his shoes. This total stranger, right? Gives me his shoes. And then he goes into his car and he grabs like a canned coffee. And he goes, here man, here, have this coffee too.
Wow.
And I'm just, whoa. And so within like 5 minutes of me just going, Krishna, I give up. I'm done with this shit. I'm walking my cow back. It's way comfortable because I'm wearing shoes and I got this coffee, so I got a little pep in my step. And I'm like, huh.
Message received.
Yeah, message received, exactly.
Holy shit, man. Damn.
Yeah, it was crazy. And so I was just like, oh, I guess I am supposed to do this. I guess okay. And then I started. There was a farm that was already taking care of cows in a similar. It was a Hare Krishna farm, and so I got linked up with them, and I started taking care of cows, working together, and we ended up having about, I think at one point we had like 10 or 12 cows, and I figured out, I learned electric fencing, which is like, man, that's a godsend itself. Yeah. Especially when you get into solar electric fencing, because then you can set up an electric fence anywhere you want, no electricity, AC electricity on grid required. And once the cows are trained on electric fencing, you can rotationally graze them. You can bring them to new spots and set up little paddocks just for the day even, or for a couple days. And so, yeah, I was, at that point, I started learning a lot more about cows. Yeah. And then it was in and then all the way to 2019, I learned how to milk cows too. And so that was a huge transition in my life. Before then, I never really had raw milk before. I drank, milk from the store, cheese from the store, but I realized how cruel the dairy industry was. I've seen all the videos. I've seen people and how environmentally not good for the environment it was. And
Right.
so I was just like, oh man, I was borderline vegan. Like I really didn't like, I would avoid, I wouldn't drink milk anymore. I would eat cheese if it was already in something, but I was like, I really don't feel good about this. And then I had raw milk, and it was raw grass-fed milk from local cows. And I was like, as soon as I took that first sip, man, my brain popped. It was like, whoa, this is good. And anyone who's had raw milk will probably share that same experience. It was like, whoa, this is not the same stuff that's at the store. This is totally different. And it was and I can tell you a little bit about that. So the pasteurization process is one thing that's not so good, just because it kills a lot of the enzymes and changes a lot of the molecules in the milk. But worse than pasteurization is homogenization, which what they do is under super heavy pressure, they push milk through they push the fat in the milk through a sieve, which breaks up the fat molecules to a point where they don't reconstitute. And so if you check out normal raw milk from a cow under a microscope, the fat globules are like these round gelatinous things floating around. And that's what our digestive system had been for thousands, because cows have been domesticated for over 10,000 years. And that's what our digestive systems had kind of evolved to go with, is these nice, easily digestible, easily assimilable fat globules. And then what happens when you do homogenization is if you check out that same fat under a microscope, they look like glass shards now. They've basically been like shattered. And so those go in when you consume that, it goes all these places it's not supposed to go. Your body's like, hey, what the heck is this? We don't know what this is, and nothing in our DNA is telling us about this stuff. And it's only been about 100 years now that's been the case with homogenization.
Yeah.
And so in real raw milk, the cream floats to the top, and you can shake it up and drink it all together if you want, but it's still not, and if you just sip the cream, you're like, that is the best stuff in the world. And so that really kind of changed my mind about milk and dairy, and also milking cows by hand, not with a machine, and being able to.
Do you want to get into that real quick with when it comes to this idea around like, well, if you're living this lifestyle, why are you drinking milk?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So what I don't know if you know about Ayurveda. It's kind of a buzzword nowadays, but Ayurveda is an ancient scripture about health, and it talks about 3 different principal body types and the different foods that are good for different body types. And Ayurveda is practiced today by millions of people. It's been practiced for thousands of years. There are medical doctors who also specialize in Ayurveda. So it's not kind of like this wacky voodoo thing. It's a recognized principles that have worked for millions and millions, if not billions of people. Medically trained doctors nowadays utilize it too. And in Ayurveda, it says that milk is one of the most nourishing, beneficial substances for the human body. But they're of course talking about raw. Milk. And they're also, but also more importantly than that, they talk about, because Ayurveda is both just like physical gross stuff, but it's also subtle. So they say part of it is, if the cow's not happy, that milk's not going to be good for you. If and you look at a dairy situation, most dairy cows are kind of beat down. They're in metal, concrete situation, and they don't get to keep their babies, which is the main crux right there of what causes immense sadness. And then that, besides all the stuff they actually do to the milk, I think that whatever you want to call it, psychic energy, subtle energy that goes into the milk from that too, is all. So I think commercial dairy at the end of the day isn't healthy for you. But when I got to see cows getting milked by hand, and I'll just give you a actual example. So there's a cow that I met, Hare Priya. Her name was Hare Priya, and she had a big old milk bag. When she first had her baby, she was producing 4 to 5 gallons a day. Okay. And a baby cow needs about 1.5 gallons, maybe 2 gallons a day at most. Okay. And so she's getting this huge excess amount of milk. Yeah. And then the baby gets to nurse as much, pretty much as much as it wants right there. And the baby's full, lays down, is like, oh, like all comatose milk. And you're like, whoa, there's still a ton of milk in here. And so you milk that out, and then you look at the constituents of milk. It's got high fat, which is now modern science is catching up, saying, oh, butter is actually good for you. Oh, these high quality fats are super essential for your brain. These vegetable oils that we've been using are really bad for you. And so you take a look at what the constituents of milk: high fat, high protein, tons of probiotics in the raw milk. So your gut health is really, really benefited. And you go, whoa, so this every day this cow is making this amazing product right here that's got fat, protein, carbohydrates, minerals, vitamins, and it doesn't even need to be like cooked or processed in any way. It's good to go right out of the cow, which to me, and I had the experience like I was talking about of growing vegetables, and it's like, you have to wait even for those quickest vegetables, it's at least like 2 months, if you're growing, and you're like, and then you get this harvest. And then for most of them, you have to cook them, you have to spice them, which now you're talking about even more energy, whether it's going to be wood burning, propane, electric stove, whatever. And I just thought, wow, nothing else is calorically efficient as this milk, especially when the cows are grass fed. They're just out there grazing on grass, something that humans can't eat, and they're turning it into this highly nutritious superfood here. And if you do it in the way I'm talking about, where the baby gets to drink as much milk as it wants, you go, hey, what's the ethical qualm here? The baby's happy, the mama cow. And people say, hey, I've heard, like, there's so many weird tropes that I have a lot of vegan friends, but there's so many like weird tropes that I get from vegans, like, well, it's not your mother, not your milk. That's one, you hear all the time. But ironically, in Krishna conscious philosophy, we refer to cows as our mother and bulls as our father. So it's like, hey, actually, she is my,
Wow. Okay.
There's multiple mothers, and cows are there's Mother Earth, and cows are also one of our mothers. So when you say, hey, no, that is my mother, and I'm taking care of her, and after she stops giving milk, I'm not going to kill her, because would you kill your own mother after you stop nursing? No. And so you say, I'm going to take care of her, and I'm going to make sure she has the best life possible, and the baby's going to grow up happy and healthy too. And so anyway, but back to that specific example of Hare Priya, after about 8 months or so, the baby's rumen, which is the first cow stomach, is fully developed, where they can eat grass and sweet potato vines and all these other things, and to the point where they don't even need the milk anymore. I've raised, I don't know how many, at least a dozen cows from baby, all doing the same process. And people tell me, hey, man, you have some of the healthiest cows I've ever seen. And it's because they got lots of milk as a baby, and they got transitioned really nicely to fresh grass and other forage. And so once the baby stops nursing, that's even more milk that's available now. And another vegan trope is, oh, did you get the cow's consent? Did the cow consent to that? And I'm like, hey, man, if you've ever been around cows, if you're doing something they don't want you to do, they're gonna kick the shit out of you. Like they'll let you know, like they're 10 times our weight and way stronger. And so actually cows have something called a letdown, where if you go to milk a cow, and certain cows will not let down for anyone but their baby. It's just like, and so anyway, but if you start to milk, and milk won't actually come out until the cow releases the milk. I don't know what's going on, some type of hormonal exchange in there, but you can only get a little bit out until the letdown happens, is what it's called. And so to me, that's like the ultimate form of consent is, hey, the cow's lined up at the gate in the morning, mooing for you. You let her in. The milk starts flowing out of her udder on its own. It literally is like squirting out. And then you milk her. She doesn't kick. She doesn't move the entire time. And then when you're all done, you pet her and you say, thank you. You give thanks. And you've just gotten this, gallons and gallons of amazing superfood. Yeah. And so Hare Priya was giving milk 5 years after she had her baby. So without having another baby.
Wow. So you had 1 month of milk that was just being reserved for the calf, and there was still excess.
Uh-huh.
And then you have a total of 5 years.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Oh, sorry. It was 7 to 8 months is when the baby cow drinks for that long.
Oh, 7 to 8 months. Gotcha. Okay.
But even
Still.
after that, it was still a ton of milk. And then after
Yeah.
the baby starts drinking, you get more. And her production slowly might decrease over time.
Mhm.
But 5 years, man, that's 365 days a year. Twice a day, you're getting thousands of calories, raw probiotic superfood calories.
Yeah.
You compare that with any other food crop, fruit trees, whatever, you're not even going to get close. Milk is a substance that you can actually completely live off of because it's a complete food. If you were to just eat only milk, it might not be in the long term the healthiest thing. But in Ayurveda, there's things called milk fast where you do nothing but only drink milk, and you're going to do way better than if you tried that with any other food. If you tried to only eat avocados or only eat beans or something, it's not going to work. But milk is just this amazing complete food, and if you do it ethically, I don't think there's anything else better.
Yeah.
Especially when you consider what the input is for the cow, the grass, and then you consider the output, which is manure, is an output, and that makes the grass grow. It's like this really small closed loop cycle where you're going, hey, I'm getting all this amazing food out on a daily basis. It's way more efficient than any other food. I can eat it raw, and you can turn the cream into butter, which you can then turn into ghee. And first of all, every single vegetable in the world tastes better with butter.
Oh yeah.
You have like beans. You're like, yeah, the beans are okay. You add butter, you're like, whoa, these are next level.
Man.
And so it's flavorful, it's palatable, it's so many good things about it. And then you can also make yogurt and cheeses and all these other things, which if you want to keep it longer, and so it's just so there's so much diversity to what you can make out of the milk too.
Yeah.
And what I do when I make cheese, I actually use the whey which is a byproduct from cheese making, as a fertilizer. So using the manure, the urine, and the whey, I make these slurries. They're just like these big. I'm doing 5-gallon buckets usually, and it has macronutrients. So your NPK, it's got micronutrients, tons of trace minerals in manure, and they're not just trace minerals, but they're in a very balanced form, which is super important, because if you have too much of one mineral, it will lock out other minerals. And if you like, a lot of people who do chemical farming, they use things like triple superphosphate, and if it's not there's right ways to apply it, but if you apply it incorrectly, you're going to actually lock up your natural nutrients that are in your soil.
Yeah.
And so I make these fertilizer buckets, and I use them myself, and I sell them too to other people who don't have cows. And I've only ever gotten good reviews about it. People say, wow. And you can sell it at a fairly cheap rate, and it's a completely local input right there.
Wow.
And so everything about it, the cow, just seems so beneficial. And I can't think of any good argument as to why you wouldn't drink the milk in all the ways that I've said.
Right. In the way that you're saying, it makes sense. In the way that I am used to, it is completely fucked.
I agree.
It is,
Yeah,
and I haven't drank milk in years because of that. Because I'm like, I've seen videos, I've seen documentary pieces here and there, and the same shit. It's like they take the baby away from the mothers, and then just stick it into this machine, hook a bunch of shit up to the udders, and then it's like there's no peace in that. It's just a product, it's not looked at as a living thing. And I'm just like,
and what to speak of, 7, 8 years old, the cow goes out of peak production, they kill the cow.
Yeah.
As a male baby, they usually kill the baby right away. Yeah. And it's just like, no. That's so bad.
It's all wrong.
Especially in Krishna conscious philosophy, cows are considered so sacred. So if you're doing those kind of things to cows, it generates actually some of the absolute worst karma you could possibly generate.
Yeah.
And so everything about it is really not cool.
Yeah.
And but so I think I have clashes with people all the time, usually vegans, I think that people are just so put off by that they can't fathom that there'd be a way of doing it, peacefully, where it's symbiosis, where, hey, these cows are actually living a better life. They get to live their full life. The mother and the baby get to still have that relationship. The baby gets to drink off the mom's udder. They get to lick each other, have a good time. And then they get to live together for the rest of their life too.
Yeah.
It's not, I mean, all that considered, it's just like, wow.
It's like you got to be able to get out of your echo chambers at least for a little bit to think about like all the stuff, like all the factors that play into this. Like you're not like the way that you're explaining this, it's just like, the agriculture is involved, people are involved, the cows are involved. It's like this complete like circular thing where everybody's benefiting. It shouldn't be so foreign, but it is.
Oh, I know, right? It's wild to me that it is, and it's weird because the dairy industry is going out of business. There so many dairy farms are closing, and I'm just like, wow, man, it's so obvious to me that you're not even making a whole lot of money. Why would you be doing this horrible thing? And it's tradition, it's family, it's whatever, but you have to be able to be objective and see what's actually happening. But I mean, it is what it is. And my favorite thing is I do cow cuddle tours and like little farm tours and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And a lot of people who come are vegan, just because it's an animal sanctuary thing like that.
Yeah.
And then I mentioned to you how we just kind of talked about, oh, we do milk our cows, and people in general like to be nice, so but I'm really good at reading people, and they're like, oh, that's cool, and then I can just tell though, they're like, what the hell, man, like, but then we show them the cows, we show them the baby cows nursing. I show how I milk the cow. I'd let them get their hand on the teat and squeeze some milk out too, usually. And almost invariably, by the end of the tour, I'm like, oh, do you guys want to try some of that milk? They just saw the baby get it. They just saw me milk. They just saw the whole thing, the whole shebang. And then almost invariably, they're like, yeah, can I get some of that? And man, every time it's like, to me, that's the best, because I just changed someone's whole output, or outlook on the industry. And I mean, I wouldn't even consider myself an industry, but but it's so funny. I had one girl tell me, she's like, I haven't had dairy in 5 years. And then we did the whole thing, and then she's like, I'll try some of that cheese. And I can just tell that it's a lot harder to get all the nutrients you need in a vegan diet. I don't want to say it's impossible, but you have to just be a little more careful about getting all your different vitamins, minerals, whatever.
Yeah.
And when you have a cow, it's kind of like nutrition for dum-dums. You're just like, oh, I just feed, like my cows, I feed them kelp meal, which has 60 different nutrients and minerals in it. And then so that goes into the milk a little bit. And it's just like, I just feed the cows this kelp meal, and I just, drink it.
Yeah.
Kelp. But so anyway, it's I just one time I did have like a couple, and they were vegan, and one of them tried the milk and the other one didn't, and I kind of felt like I was like, uh-oh, like, did I just
relationship? You just ended that relationship, man.
I was like, oh shit, dude, I'm sorry.
Oh yeah, man. The ride home after that was probably tense. Like, can't believe it.
But but I really do love showing people, and I get people. I've been a vegetarian my whole life. I've never ate meat, and I have people who are meat eaters who come on the tour, and so there's something there for everyone.
Yeah.
So one of my favorite stories was I had this Japanese family visit, and 7 people, and after maybe 10 minutes of just talking about cows and showing how sweet they can be, just like a dog or a cat or any other animal that we interact with.
Yeah.
the old grandpa, the old Japanese grandpa, and he sounded just like this. I'm not being racist or nothing. He goes, oh, you have widened my vision. And he goes, I will never eat a cow again. And I was
Wow.
like, whoa, dude, that was the coolest thing. You know, I gave him a hug. I was like, that's the coolest
Wow.
thing here. And
Wow.
so for me, and I hear that a lot. People, they'll say something like, oh, it's going to be real hard to eat any cows, you know? And so that's kind of my goal. If you eat meat, maybe you get a different idea about the cows. And you know, when you mention like something like eating horse meat to people, they go, oh, why would you eat a horse, you know?
Right.
And so I kind of hope people get that same idea about cows. Like, hey, they're really smart, they're affectionate, they're social creatures. You know, why are we treating them the way we're treating them?
Yeah.
And then for vegans, I hope to show them like, hey, milk doesn't have to be evil. It can be done in a good way that benefits everyone. Check it out.
Well,
And
it's important what you're doing because it's a way that it can be seen as different. I mean, the dairy industry is not something that people get to see. You know, it's not something that they have access to unless they actually seek it out. And if you seek it out, you're gonna go on a downward spiral of videos. They're gonna ruin your fucking day.
Right.
Oh my God. But you know what you're doing is not just talking about how it works. You're actually showing like, no, this is how it works.
Yeah, definitely. And also something I like to bring up to a lot of people don't realize this is, I mean, and it's not in an argumentative way, it's just more of like a expository way. If you are eating commercial food from the store, even a completely vegan diet, you're still causing lots of environmental degradation. There are dead animals attached to that. There are a lot of organic crops are fertilized with slaughterhouse byproducts, which is blood meal, bone meal, feather meal, leather meal. And so all these slaughterhouse byproducts are growing your organic vegan food.
Wait,
And so,
what?
yeah.
Hold up.
So,
I haven't heard of this one yet. What?
oh yeah, this is a shocking argument for. I mean, I don't want to call it an argument. It's just like a truth. And so, if you almost without, you know, there might be like 1 or 0.1% of farms that do something called veganics, where they only grow with vegan based fertilizer.
Okay.
But when you do organic farming, you're not allowed to use petrochemical inputs because it has to be organic stuff. The
Right.
number one used in the billions of tons of organic fertilizers are bone meal, feather meal, leather meal, blood meal, and then what you have manure from slaughterhouses. You know, but so you're still totally tied into this evil machine, and so that's the real benefit of having a cow is that you break out of that cycle. You not only do you get really good food locally every day, you're also getting really good fertilizer to grow your own food locally every day. So I kind of a challenge I give to people is I say just try to grow as much of your own food as you possibly can.
Yeah.
Whatever, you know, and don't utilize these really negative inputs. When I first started growing food, I would go to the Home Depot or the Ace Hardware to buy fertilizer, and everything there is bone meal, feather meal, leather meal. Most soils have organic soils have that in them too. And I'm just like, I felt horrible. I remember I bought bone meal a couple times and I throw it out on my crops and stuff, and I'm just like, I just had this horrible feeling in my chest. Like, what am I supporting? What is the supply chain on this?
It's like you're
Yeah.
sprinkling death off.
So exactly, and I'm a real practical person, but I also like notice like the psychic subtle energies and things. And so if you're throwing all this literally dead bodies on all your food, and you're growing it and you're celebrating it, it's kind of like, oh man, I don't think you're actually disconnected now from this whole slaughter industry. You're actually just another customer of it.
Fuck.
And yeah, right. Well, I don't want to be like discouraging. You know, organic food is really good. I tell everyone to eat it organic as much as you can.
Oh man, but that's the thing, like, because I knew about the whole, you know, if you're into like the mass farming, you know, you're getting your products at the store, which most, let's be honest, most of us are. I get a lot of my products at the store.
Hey, me too. I don't want to claim to be like a saint either. I
Yeah,
buy lots of
it's just the reality of what we live in right now. But you buy, like, buy something organic, and you buy like some fruits or vegetables. You don't think that has any animal product involved in the growing of it. I understand that through the picking process and like some of the machines that go out into the fields, they're gonna grind up a bunch of rodents and shit. Like, that's just something that happens. But I did not realize that all the animal products were involved in the actual, like.
I think there's only a few commonly used things that aren't linked to the slaughter industry, which would be like rock powders, like rock phosphate. Some people use alfalfa meal and kelp meal and stuff like that, but those are really expensive. So organic farmers aren't going to be going out of their way to use these really expensive things,
Right, and that's also the fuckery that Monsanto helped with, of like this whole, like, you have to pay money to say that you're organic, like what.
I'm like more important than organic and more important than whatever ethical. I buy local, get to actually know local producers.
Yeah,
they're usually more than happy to show you what they're doing.
Dude, honestly, like, I feel like a way that it can, instead of having like this mass production, like, there's so many little pockets of land. Like, if we put a concerted effort into buying local more than anything else, it's like,
definitely. The here on the Big Island in Hawaii in general, I don't know why it's not more of a concern. We import something like 95% of our food from the mainland. And we're like, wait a minute, we can grow food year round here. We have all the water we need. Why are we dependent on and obviously that wasn't the case a couple hundred years ago. The Hawaiian Kingdom was growing all their own food completely locally, supporting huge populations. And that was before any, agricultural technology, modern agricultural technology or anything like that. And I think it's just the way it is now, and we're slowly moving away from that. And the best thing you can do is support your local farmers. And hey, and you know what? Go and say you want to be a farmer, but you don't have any land. Go and do what I do. Go meet someone. Go meet people. Go knock on a door and say, hey, I noticed you have this land here you're not doing anything with. What do you? Can we make some kind of a deal where I want to do this? And you'd be surprised. Most people are super reasonable and open to things like that. And it's like you can't. I don't know, nowadays with the phones and everything, and I think people are kind of scared of talking to people.
Well, I mean, the pandemic didn't help with that either. Like, that's making it even worse. Like, now people are just like stay away from me. But there does need to be a lot more camaraderie around this, around this type of stuff, because again, it works.
Mm-hmm. In a way, I was going to say, the pandemic might end up helping, at least in Hawaii, because we realized, hey, if for some reason the boats couldn't come in because whatever the pandemic, they have to get. Hey, maybe we do have to start growing our own food here. It kind of. I know a lot of people, myself included, when the first lockdowns hit, I went out and bought a shit ton of seeds and starts and new things, and I know a lot of people here did the same thing, and it was kind of like that impetus, like, okay, this might get serious. It didn't turn out to be obviously as crazy as they were saying at first, but a lot of people were just like, and thankfully, but a lot of people were just really about, hey, we need to grow something, and so that was something cool that's happened since then. But back to the cows. So I had like 12, 13 cows. I'd rescue an odd cow here and there.
Mm-hmm.
But the land that I had the cows on was pretty much full. In Hawaii, about 2 acres per cow, and we were already like grazing on the neighbor's land and stuff like that. And anyway, I have a scythe. I don't know if you know what that is. It's like this big long stick with a big huge blade on the end.
Blade.
Yeah. a curved blade, and you keep it really sharp so it doesn't take a whole lot of force, and it cuts the grass and piles it all at once.
Okay.
And so in Hawaii, there's grass everywhere on the side of the road, like an odd field here or there.
Yeah.
And so what I was doing for a while, as we got maxed out on our land, is I would go out and I'd scythe grass for the cows, or I'd scythe, and I'd make huge piles, put them in bags, and then take them back. It's called chop and carry. It's used all over the world as a way to feed animals.
Yeah.
That's what it's referred to as. But so nothing real special there. But I was doing it one day, and the owner of the land came out of his house, and he's like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "Hey man, I'm just cutting some grass here. Hope you don't mind." And he goes, "You could cut the grass. You feeding your goats?" And I go, "Actually, cows." And he goes, "Cows? You're gonna need a lot of grass." And I said, "Yeah." And he's like, "Hey, well, you can." And I was just kind of on the side of the road, and he goes, "You can come into my, here and cut all this grass if you want." Like, hey, that'll save me a trip, mowing.
Yeah.
And so I started doing that for maybe a couple months. And one day I was in the middle of the field scything the grass, and I took a break. I look around. I'm like, man, this field is so nice. I wish I owned this land. I would put like 10 cows just here alone. And then I go, wait a minute, I don't have to own it. Why don't I just talk to the guy? And so I go and his name was Ken. I said, "Hey, Ken, what do you think about me bringing some of my cows here?" And he goes, "Well, you're going to need fencing. Fencing's like $10 a foot or more, a linear foot. It's super expensive." And I go, my cows are trained on electric fencing. And relatively speaking, electric fencing is way cheaper. And so I said, "I could set up the electric fence here, and we could just graze the cows here." And then he goes, "I don't know, man. I'll think about it. I'll get back to you." And then he called me up the next day, and he said, "We need to get your cows here as soon as possible." And I said, "What?" And he goes, the deadline for the tax break is in 1 week. And so I already made an appointment because
shit.
and so in Hawaii, there's something that's made, I'm pretty sure it's made to benefit the beef industry. There's a lot of beef cattle out here on grass. And what it is the property taxes here are so high, and you need 2 acres per cow, and you don't get that much money for a beef cow. Okay. So if people were raising beef cows and they have to pay their property taxes, it's almost like you're still losing money. And so I think that's my reasoning behind it. So they made this thing that if you have cows on your land, your tax rate goes down to almost nothing. It's like a 99% reduction in your land tax. And so he goes, "I already made an appointment for the guy to come out. So you got to set up the fencing as soon as possible and get the cows here for when the tax guy comes out to verify." And so I got my cows there. I set up the fence, and he ended up saving $1,000 a year on his taxes just having the cows there.
Wow.
So he was like stoked. And then within a few months, his whole property, instead of being like 5-6 foot tall grass, is now, ankle high grass, a little higher maybe sometimes. And so he could actually walk around his property and check it out, and "Oh, I want to actually do something here," And that's almost all over the island. These people come in and they buy huge properties, 10, 20 acres, 30 acres, 40 acres, and they don't even really want to do anything with it. They just want to have a house and
land.
Kind of, yeah. And so what I'm always looking for is new pastures. And that was my first, what I call a satellite pasture, where it's not my main pasture, but it's a pasture that I can put cows that are no longer milking. I can put male cows like bulls or steers. I can put older calves that have been weaned or and so you don't have to kill them, because you're like, where are we going to put this cow? What are we going to do? And the people benefit, the cows are stoked, the land benefits. And so something that happened out here in Hawaii for over 100 years was the plantation industry. Yeah. And it completely ravaged the soil. Anywhere they grew sugarcane and pineapple and everything, not only the things they were spraying to kill the bugs and funguses and stuff, but also just the way they did it. Leaving the soil exposed to heavy rains. All the topsoil would wash off when heavy rains came. And to do sugarcane in a lot of places, they would harvest the sugarcane with a giant excavator. And when they rip out that sugarcane, all the roots are pulling out all the best topsoil as they pull it out. They would take it to a river, wash it all, process it there. And so after 100 years of doing that, they were like, hey, the cane, we have to put way more fertilizer than we used to, and we're not getting nearly as much as we used to. And then that's when the cane industry ended up going somewhere else. And so the sugarcane industry in Hawaii is not really a thing anymore, but they destroyed all this amazing soil that took hundreds, if not thousands of years to form. Yeah. And now what's left in those fields is just overgrown grass, which isn't the worst thing in the world, but it's kind of just like a pause, like nothing's really happening. You have this really tall grass, it's maxed out. There's a little bit of nutrient cycling going on there, but not a whole lot. Yeah. When you get cows on that land, the cows automatically turn into these amazing cyclers of that grass energy. So they eat the grass, they poop it out into, like, basically manure is a great fertilizer, but it's also a soil when it dries. So the cows are building this topsoil from grass. And what I do is I section up a field into different paddocks where I'm frequently moving the cows. So I'll put them in a small area, they'll eat as much grass as they can, and then in a couple days, maybe a week at most, I'll move them to the next section. And then that section that they were just on now has all this poop, all this urine. And what happens, you go and look at a cow patty in just a few days after it's dropped, it's got fly larvae in there, it's got red wriggler worms in there, it's got dung beetles in there. So it turns into this like oasis for life. Yeah. Every dung patty, you flip it upside down, it's like, oh my God, look at all those living things in there. And they're all eating the dung. So there's secondary composting what the cows already did. And then you're getting worm castings, beetle castings, and that's making the grass grow faster. Grass growing faster and growing in this cycle, the grass itself, because plants breathe CO2. So the grass is taking in way more carbon than it would be if it was just tall grass just sitting there not doing anything. And so by the time the cows come around in the cycle, that grass is way more palatable to them because it's more fertile now. And it's also, knee high, which means it has way more sugar and way more protein. So then the cows eat it even better than they did the first time.
Wow.
And so instead of just being this frozen state with these cows, you're cycling all this energy over and over and over, taking carbon from the air as well, from the environment, and you're building topsoil, you're building fertility on land that was completely ravaged. Wow. And so cows are pretty much the epitome of bioregenerative agriculture, using bioregenerative, using life, bio, to regenerate the land. And that's how all soil came to be anyway, through slow composting, through different things like that. And the cows just speed everything up like way faster.
Yeah. Yeah, man. Dude. Yeah, I didn't even realize, like, so the topsoil is very, very, very important in the carbon footprint.
Oh, hugely important. So if you do rotational grazing and you do this in such a way, the cows are actually sequestering carbon, super important. More importantly, even though, is they're adding fertility. So after a couple of years of cows being on land where the topsoil was completely gone, a couple of years of rotational grazing, you can pretty much grow anything there and it's going to flourish.
Damn.
Just through their natural, the cows aren't doing, they're not like we're doing work or anything. They're just living their life.
They're living their life, man. Yeah.
By the Vedas, the cows are considered so beneficial and our mother, and the bulls are our father.
That makes a lot more sense now.
So it's not like just this weird sentimental cultural thing. It's a very practical observation of like, hey, everything we have comes from plants and agriculture, and the best plants and agriculture come from land that cows have been on. Yeah. And so it's a really logical, practical thing to call cows sacred, because if they're not sacred, I don't know what is.
Yeah. Yeah, man. What are people's main hangups when you're talking to them about this, about about how well this can work? Like, I just wonder how many people are just frankly brainwashed to the point where anything that combats an idea that's in their head, they're like, nope, there's no way that could be it.
Well, this problem I've had with land, trying to get different pastures in the past, there's sometimes people say, oh, what about the liability if a cow went through the electric fence and a car hit it or something, which is understandable, especially if you had, you know, if you have a lot of money and you don't want it to get, you know, taken away in litigation. But liability insurance is really cheap. So I have liability insurance where they cover you for like up to $1 million for like 25 bucks a month. So that's usually my first answer for people. I was like, hey, I have liability insurance. But you know, and as far as the milk goes, I've never really encountered a logical argument, but there's emotional arguments about you're exploiting these animals. We don't need milk to survive. Milk is bad for you. And if you look at the studies, milk is bad for you. Milk from the store, from sad cows, from, you know, so it's I don't know. When I talk to people who are a little open-minded, whether they're vegan, meat eater, whatever, they go, "Wow, this is really cool. Yeah, this works." And then if people are going to be brainwashed, or that's their trip, and you know, there's lots of land out there, and you know, I have there's actually as far as hang-ups, there's this one lady. She had this amazing pasture, man. It was next to a 13-acre pasture I had, and it was 7 acres, just like lush, the best grass ever. I've driven past it for years, and I was like, I need to find out who owns this land and just get my cows here. So I look up like the tax records, whatever. I get the name. Anyway, I end up getting her her mailing address. I send her a thing to call me. She calls me, and I say, hey, I'm so glad I got a hold of you. I want to put cows on your land. I noticed you're not doing anything there. And then she goes, oh, we had a problem with a horse in the past. I don't really want the liability. And I say, I got liability insurance. And she goes, oh, well, you know, it's not for me. Sorry, no, it's going to be a no. And I was just like, oh, okay, click. And I was just like, man, I can't take no for an answer. That grass is so nice. And so I ended up just fencing the property, even though she told me no. I fenced it anyway. And I brought my cows there, and the cows loved it. And I was waiting. I was like, wow, I wonder when I'm going to get the call.
Yeah.
And so one day, the pasture that I had my cows at, with permission next door, the lady there calls me, and she goes, because the other lady I'm talking about didn't live there. It was just a field.
Okay.
But so the other lady calls me, and she goes, hey, they are they're really upset. They just called, Kathleen, she's so mad. She said that you're not supposed to be here with the cows. And I'm like, oh, uh-oh. But it was a year had gone by. So I felt like, a year of the cows being happy, and the land transformed completely. Instead of overgrown grass, it looked like this really nicely managed, manicured whenever the cows got out of an area.
Yeah.
And so, and the grass had become much more dark green and lush. And so anyway, I get on the phone with her, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is a big misunderstanding. I'm so sorry. And she goes, misunderstanding? I told you no. And I'm like, I go, oh yeah, but I ran into this guy on your property. I think he said he was your property manager, and he said it was okay. Which I'll admit that was a lie, but
oh man,
lie for the cows if I have to.
Yeah.
And so I was like, I said he was just he was chopping down some trees, and I asked him. He said it was okay. He thought he was your guy. And then she's like, someone was stealing trees, and I said, yeah, I haven't seen him since. And she's like, well. And I didn't want to get hit with a fraud lawsuit or something.
Right.
But I told her, I said, I'm so sorry for the misunderstanding. I'll move the cows today. I'll take down all the fencing. Won't be a problem. And she goes, wait. She goes, actually, it looks really nice. And she goes, and the neighbor said that she's saving money on her taxes. And I said, yeah. And she goes, so how about you can just keep the cows there? And I was just like, oh, cool. And she actually wanted a lease though, like a formal lease. And so she put me a lease for 1 year for $0 for a whole year lease on 7 acres. And I was just like, man, sometimes you can't take no for an answer. You just, if they don't believe you, you got to show them.
Dude, I love it, man. I love it.
When I tell other people that, they're just like, "Are you insane?"
Yeah.
I'm like, "A little bit."
But you're just sitting here like, no, I know it's gonna work.
Yeah.
I know it's gonna work. I know it's gonna be better than it was before, and it's just making everything else better. Like.
Oh, totally.
Oh man, dude, I've seen some of the videos of you taking the cows through like what is it, like a farmer's market area?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, what's that been like when you've been taking them around like other people?
Well, so I've done things where like there's a place here called the Hawaiian Sanctuary where they host different local farmers and to kind of share information and knowledge with people. And so I've done that before, and I've also taken cows to the farmers market. One time there was like a volunteer cemetery cleanup, and I brought a cow to that to like eat some of the grass while we were doing a cleanup and stuff. And it's my favorite thing to do when people get to interact. Well, first of all, when they see a cow in a minivan, they're just like, what? and then when I'm walking the cow just like anyone would walk a dog.
Yeah.
People, they come running from 20, 30 feet away. They come running over like, oh my God, can I pet her? Can I go, yeah, that's why she's here. Like, give her some love. And the farmer's market was fun because all the different farmers were coming out with like their produce, like old bananas and stuff, and like feeding her. And the reason I do that is because it's really fun for me, for one.
Mm-hmm.
And I also have like a little sign when I do it that says cow selfies $3, like donation. And so you'd be surprised, so many people are like, take my money.
Wow. Yeah.
For the cows too. And they're people taking selfies and stuff. And some people, like, I remember one lady was almost crying. She was just like, oh my God, I've never seen a cow like this. This is so cool. And human beings have been around cows and relied on cows for thousands of years. And I know that that's in our brain DNA, our epigenetic memory, And so when people get to interact with cows for the first time or in a different way that they've never interacted before, I think it really speaks to something deep in them where they're just like, whoa, cows, because it's such a part of human history for so long. And it's just so fun, man. I love taking cows out. I've been talking, a lot of my cows the cow that I used to bring out is a lot bigger now, but I also have a bigger van. So I've been thinking about, you just got to put a tarp down and
Oh my God. Pretty soon you're going to have this giant like motorcade of like your cows like rolling up to the farmer's market like, I'm here.
Yo, you guys want to trade some poop for food? Like,
we can make it work. I know we can.
And one time I took one of my cows to the Hawaiian Sanctuary where I gave a talk. Yeah. And I just had someone else kind of hold their rope while I was talking and demonstrating things to people. And it was so cool because there were 2 dogs there. Like, people brought their dogs, and the dogs were like running around, acting all misbehaved. And the cow was just totally chill the entire time, just hanging out. And then at the end of the talk, someone said, hey, do cows know their names? And I go, of course they do, right, Tulsi? And right when I said that, she goes, nah. It was
awesome.
And so, people get a totally different idea of cows just from one interaction, which is really sweet. Yeah. And they get to, in everything I do, I've always loved kind of like pushing the envelope and challenging people's preconceived notions. Mm-hmm. And even my own, like, I'll play devil's advocate. I'll argue with people even if I completely agree with them. Just because I feel like it stimulates the conversation, and then we might come to a better understanding that we didn't have before, rather than just like, yeah, I agree, those guys suck. I usually play devil's advocate. I'm like, well, like, what about, and sometimes I piss people off because if they don't know me in person, because they think I'm like supporting some. Okay. But for me, it's I like this analogy. It's like when you're churning butter. So butter is made from cream that comes off the top of the milk. And when you're churning butter, it's violent, whether you're doing it by hand or you're shaking the cream in a jar or you're using a blender. It's like, it's like noise or it's like a lot of motion and what you might consider like, whoa, kind of like violent action, or, but it's producing this butter, which will then float to the top. So that's kind of how I am with different topics and conversations. I like to shake it up a bit so we can get the butter, if that makes sense.
It definitely makes a lot of sense, man. I mean, we don't come to a better understanding by staying in the comfort zone.
Exactly, definitely. And which leads me into my next point. So it was January 2019, I guess a couple months before that, where the Big Island Dairy, which is the topic of that video I think you saw, was shut down because they were a confined animal feeding operation, and they were polluting the waterways with huge overloads of manure, and the animals were on antibiotics, hormones, eating GMO feed, and anyway, lots of bad stuff going on there. And they finally got shut down because of like a local movement where the people were like, hey, we don't want this here. And it was weird because they got a bunch of warnings and they didn't change their game at all, which blows my mind. I wish they would have like called me, because I could, off the top of my head, I can think of like so many solutions to the problem they were having. Yeah. But whatever, maybe it was like a tax thing they wanted to get shut down. I don't know. But and yeah, it's weird how the world works now.
Right.
But so anyway, they got shut down, and so my good friend Arthur, he was like, man, you should get some of those cows, because they're really good milk cows and they're going to be killed otherwise now. And so I was just like, I don't know, man, I got my hands full already. But about stepping out of our comfort zone, how are we gonna grow? So I had a little community meeting where I just like invited anyone to come who might want to help or talk story about it. And I decided, I'll do a fundraiser and we'll raise some funds. I was thinking maybe they were selling the cows for really, really cheap because they were ordered by a court to reduce their number of cows very quickly. So they were just trying to get the cows out of there. And I'm talking like amazing, what I call Ferrari milk cows being sold for pennies on the dollar. And, but anyway, that wasn't my main focus. The milk, just to save the cows, was the main focus. Yeah. But, so we raised a ton of money. Like, it went semi-viral, and I don't even know why. It was not anything special, but I guess it really resonated with a lot of people. A lot of people in the Hare Krishna community, or the broader Hindu community in the US, donated. And we ended up it was a total of 70 cows we rescued from this dairy all at once. Yeah. And everyone, a lot of people were telling me like, dude, you're crazy. What are you doing?
Cows running up in people's yards, and they're like, where the fuck did this thing come from? Like, hey, guys.
Oops. Yeah. But so anyway, I had already found people with pastures who wanted the cows too. Mm-hmm. So it was like, it wasn't just like, I'm taking on all these cows, who knows what's going to happen. I kind of had a plan in mind. But what I bought mostly calves, because obviously you're not going to get any kind of production or anything for years out of a calf, but they're easier in general to work with. And when they're at a young age, you can train them better to have a better overall temperament, so a little bit easier to care for the rest of their life. Yeah. And there was another rescue group too that they rescued something like 400 cows, but they didn't centralize it at all. They were basically just picking the cows up, taking them off to people's property and dropping them off, which worked out for a lot of situations, but didn't work out for a lot of other reasons for certain people. Because they didn't realize, I got these baby cows, but hey, that's going to turn into a 1,500-pound cow. And if you don't have the right acreage, now you're in trouble. If you don't have the right fencing, so they were it was a good thing that they did, but it was a little irresponsible in some cases, which I understand, it was kind of an emergency situation. But they were, they were giving cows to people who didn't really have the knowledge, the expertise, or how to handle them. Yeah. And so anyway, but that's beside the point. We got our cows. I brought them all to a centralized property, and I took care of them I was buying tons of supplemental feed because there wasn't nearly enough grass for them, but with the money that we'd raised. But my intention was for at least 2 months, I wanted to get them trained to my call. So I do a cow call for pretty much all my cows where I'm like, "Cuckoo, coo-yoo." And I wanted all these cows to be trained and came and used to me kind of at least getting close to them and feeding them. Because if I just put these cows out on a pasture and they get out one day, oh my God, that's going to be a nightmare.
Yeah.
Or if the cows aren't properly trained on electric fencing and I put them out somewhere and they get out, oh my God, that's another nightmare. And so I got all the cows really as tame and trained as they could be coming from a confined animal feeding operation. And they really trained quick on the electric fence, which was really nice. And that was, I would say, like for that 2 months though, I was pulling like, 18, 19-hour days, just taking care of all these cows. And it was, I remember I'd wake up like 4:30 in the morning and I'd get to work, and then I'd like go to, I'd go to bed like almost midnight, and I'd just like totally clonk out and then just like wake up like at 4, like, oh, I gotta get going again.
Yeah.
But, and we got mostly calves, but we also got 10 cows that were in milk because of the dairy had 1,800 cows in milk. So we had 10 cows and big cows that were in milk, and I didn't even intend to milk them, at least not right away. But they started freaking out after 3 to 4 days, because I'm telling you, their udders were like gonna explode. They were high production milk cows, and they were freaking out because they weren't getting milked anymore. And if any breastfeeding human mom will tell you, you want to get the milk out, and it also can lead to infection called mastitis, where then it really hurts. And anyway, so after like 2 to 3 days of they started screaming, these cows, like crazy. And I was like, oh, I guess I got to try to milk them. And then luckily they were pretty easy. They used to being handled for milk, with a machine though. They never been hand milked. And so I started milking them. And so that was part of my day too. I was milking at that time 12 cows by hand, two times a day. And that would take a couple hours just to do that. And I didn't even have any I didn't have any huge customer base to buy the milk or anything. So I was like, for something like 6 or maybe like 8 gallons of it, I was bottle feeding to the smallest calves.
Yeah.
So I would milk out all this milk, and I wanted the calves to just drink off the moms, but neither one had ever done that. Like, you know what I mean? So it was like they wouldn't eat. I'd have the point where the mom was like tied up, and I'd bring the baby right up to the udder, and I'd squirt the milk in its mouth. I'd be like, "Come on, nurse," and they just didn't have the instinct anymore. Yeah. So I ended up bottle feeding, and the moms didn't like it either because they had never been nursed on by their babies. So the moms were like kicking and stuff, and but because they wasn't their baby necessarily too. Right. And so anyway, I was milking all these cows, man. It was like, whoa, talk about. But it made me like so much more just physically strong, handling all the hay bales, and everything, okay. And then just mentally strong, just going through that like kind of super cow boot camp. And then after just a couple months, I had gotten to the point where we were, okay, I feel comfortable. We put the cows on all these different pastures. And that's how it's been now for about 1.5 years. And so my days just going around, checking on these cows, checking on these cows, checking on these cows. And it's going good though. It's at one point I thought like, oh my gosh, what did I get myself into? I don't think I can do this anymore. Yeah. And now it's like, wow, we really did it, man. These cows are so happy and healthy now, and they grew up really strong and look beautiful, and they're relatively very tame compared to most other people's cows. Yeah. And I don't know exactly what I'm going to plan to do with all the cows in the future, but as of now, they're happy. I'm happy. Even though the cows are all in lush pastures and they're getting as much grass as they can, there's still like unavoidable costs, which are fencing repair. Occasionally, usually every year or so, the line, especially with the UV here, the line starts to get degraded, so you have to replace the line. And then there's fly control, so different methods of killing off the flies, which are giving the cows a lot of trouble. Because we do rotational grazing, that's one of the ways to keep cows away from the fly larvae that are popping out of their old manure. So we keep the flies down pretty good just naturally like that, but especially because these cows are Holsteins, so they're kind of like factory cows. They don't have the strongest coats, So the flies give them a lot more. The long-term solution is breeding the cows to have strong coats again, like they originally had.
Yeah.
So that's fly control is a cost, and transportation, occasionally moving the cows, and then mineral supplementation, because as I was talking about, a lot of these fields were completely ravaged by sugarcane farming, so they lack certain nutrients or minerals. So that's why I feed seaweed kelp to the cows too, which is really good because the cows utilize everything they need, and then it goes out in their manure, so it's adding that back into the land in the long run, which is really good.
And it's really just building what they're going to be able to eat off of later.
Exactly. It's the smallest permaculture loop you can create right there. And I think like as far as I know, our costs are super efficient. It ends up being about 50 cents a day per cow when you average everything out, which is like, hey, that's 2 quarters a day to take care of a cow. But when you have like right now, there's 65 cows in my care. We'd rescued 70 from the dairy, and I already had some. But there was a few people I met who had really nice properties, and they wanted to fully adopt the cows themselves on the agreement that they would never sell or kill the cows. And so that's something. I mean, all in all, actually, it was like 20 cows kind of got permanently adopted that way. And then so I'm caring for 65 cows now, and 65 cows, 50 cents a day. It ends up being like $30 a day average cost for the cows, which ain't that bad. It's pretty good. So, but in the future, I'm trying to get the manure, the fertilizer I make as more of a regular thing, find more clients for that. Because if I could just sell the fertilizer from the cows, they'd cover their costs, so that's, to me, that'd be the most, and then the cow cuddling was going so good. We're doing it on Airbnb experiences, and I think it's something like 30 plus reviews, and all the best reviews you ever read. People are like, this changed my life. This was the best thing I've ever done. But then right when we were like, I was like, man, we got bookings like multiple times a week. This is awesome. That's right when COVID hit.
Oh, man.
So that kind of sucked, but it's also been good because for me, when you get put into like, challenging situations or things get rustled up, then you have to learn to be more efficient, you learn new ways of doing things. And so something I've been doing too is making silage, which certain places that aren't really suitable for cows, maybe because they're growing intensive crops there or something, and they don't want the possibility of the cows destroying the crops, but they still have to mow around the fields and mow around the crops and stuff. So what I got this implement, and this was just like an idea. I mean, silage is a thing that's done all over the place, but so what I do is I got this implement that attaches to the farmer's mower, and it catches all the grass clippings when they mow.
Okay.
And then with the grass clippings, I ferment them into silage, and I just do it real low tech. I use trash cans and just pack them real tight. And that anaerobic fermentation of the grass increases the protein, increases the palatability, and it also becomes storable because it's a fermented probiotic product. So in a few hours of mowing, I can generate a half ton to a ton, depending of probiotic storable food for the cows, for cows that have special needs or something like that.
Wow.
So, to me, it's crazy that all these people are just mowing their lawns and like not catching the grass and like turning it into animal feed or whatever. It's wild. But that's something I might even develop into a business at some point, because the numbers work. The numbers are there to make
I mean, that to me takes out the need for all this excess grain and corn that they're being fed in the first place.
Oh yeah, totally.
Like an industry of like, hey, just bag up all this and like put it in trash cans, and then you can feed cows something that isn't genetically modified with pesticides and all this other shit.
Yep. And it's crazy, the reason cows they don't really care about the long-term health of the cow, because they're going to kill them in if it's a beef cow in 2 years, and if it's a milk cow in 7 to 8 years. Okay. So they're not really caring about the long-term health effects to the cow. So that's why they feed things like the corn, the GMO grains and stuff like that, which actually aren't very healthy for the cows, especially in the long term. And they change the constituency of the milk in the case of dairy. So there's studies that have been done on this where grass-fed dairy, the ratio of different fats and the amount of DHA, which everyone should look up DHA. It's one of the most important things for your brain and maintaining your brain and maintaining and building new brain synapses in your brain. So if you compare grain-fed dairy with grass-fed dairy, there's no comparison. All the ratios are completely off in the grain-fed dairy, where it's going to cause problems in your health, versus the grass-fed dairy, which is the cow's natural diet. Hey, well, who'd have thought? You know, it changes the constituency of the milk to be super beneficial, having the right ratios for your body to digest properly. And so the grain thing is just a production thing. They're like, hey, we can get this much more production. And some places do corn silage, where they'll harvest the whole corn plant, and so you're getting some leaf matter in there with the grain. But even that, I really think all cows should be grass fed and silage fed. If you, obviously in the winter in most places there's not going to be grass. Yeah. So hay and silage, but the more grass you feed your cows and legumes, they're going to be way better off than. And when I say legumes, I mean whole plant legumes, not like the beans themselves.
Right. Yeah, man.
But yeah, man. So the cows are doing good. We're doing good. The cow cuddling's coming back into play now because of the COVID restrictions are kind of, who knows though, you know.
Dude, that shit's changing by the day. It seems like, you know, this whole year has been crazy, but you know, I'm sure you have been staying busy taking care of all your cows.
Yep, definitely staying busy. I remember too when they first, you know, the lockdown in March, they were like, oh, it's just 2 weeks, you know, to slow the spread. And I was like, oh, I was even mad about that. I was like, man, 2 weeks. And then it's like 9 months later. You're
right. You're like, damn.
Something I joke about is, my friend started this, but I post sometimes, I go, just 2 weeks, guys, we got this. You know?
Yeah, it's been the never-ending 2 weeks is what it's been seeming like. But
yeah, it's like Groundhog Day or something. But
yeah, but maybe we need to put more effort into our cows that we're putting in factory farms. Maybe that's the answer here.
Yeah, well, you know what's interesting too, it kind of COVID related here is, and this was something that was said in the beginning by a number of doctors, but now it's kind of changed over time. But or it's been, now a lot of the mainstream is coming out with it, is vitamin D. Yeah. Vitamin D is one of the totally most important things, especially for respiratory health.
Yep.
And if you are out in the sun and you're taking care of your crops and your animals, you're getting tons of vitamin D. Your skin makes it naturally from sunlight exposure, from the UV light. And if you're eating grass-fed dairy, guess what? Tons of vitamin D in that too. And so but for obvious reasons, most of the United States is actually extremely deficient in vitamin D because of our sedentary lifestyles. We stay inside more. When we go outside, we put on sunscreen and all this stuff, which blocks the UV light, which stops the vitamin D. It's really like so backwards in so many ways.
So backwards, dude.
I think it's one of the number one, and this was like a mainstream scientific medical thing. It's the number one factor besides age to make sure you don't get you get way less harsh COVID symptoms if you're vitamin D sufficient. So if you have enough vitamin D, it's just you're gonna be done in a couple days. You know, you'll go right through it. Whereas they found out something like 98% of people who had severe symptoms and were hospitalized, vitamin D deficient. Wow. And so get your vitamin D. If you have to buy a supplement, go find a high quality supplement and do it. But better yet, get out in the sun, man.
For sure. Yeah. And get you a grass-fed cow or something. Well, shit, man. I feel like we've definitely touched on quite a bit for this one. Is there anything else that you wanted to go over, or that you feel like is some good information for people to know about what you're doing, about what's going on?
Yeah, I think I've pretty much covered it all. I guess Yeah, I could talk for hours about different cow stories, but
Dude,
better to just go.
we'll have
Better
to
just
do a separate podcast just with cow stories.
That'd be fun too, especially if I got like older cowboys and stuff, to sit down and tell their cow stories.
Oh my God, that'd be great.
But yeah, I mean, you have some really good questions, and I'm glad we got into the whole milk thing and the soil thing, and yeah, it's pretty much it. And if you wanna hear cow stories, you can go on my Facebook or Instagram, or look us up, Krishna Cow Sanctuary. We post some cool cow stories every now and then.
Are you guys you're always like fundraising for this, right? Is that?
Yeah, well, I was doing quarterly fundraisers where we'd start a fundraiser, and ideally it would fund us for the next 4 months. It's not a whole lot of money, but just recently I did an annual fundraiser where I'm just hoping to, hey, maybe we can bust out the whole year, and then I don't have to focus on fundraising, and I could just focus on the cows for the year.
Okay, I gotcha.
But yeah, go ahead.
Well, I was just gonna say, if people want to know how to find your stuff, see your videos, and follow along, like, what do they need to check out on the social medias and online?
So our Instagram and Facebook, we have a page on Facebook, and our Instagram is Krishna Cow Sanctuary. Pretty self-explanatory there. And if you go on those avenues, you'll see all kinds of posts about if there's a GoFundMe, or if you want to give through PayPal. And then we also have a website. It's just this really simple merchant site, which is KrishnaCowSanctuary.com. And there, out of the 65 cows I have, we're only milking 2 cows, but I'm only getting like 5 or 6 gallons a day. But I say only, but that's actually a lot of it. But one of the products we make is we make butter, and then we clarify the butter into ghee. And ghee has a super long shelf life. It doesn't really go bad if you keep it nice. Super healthy for you. It's one of the absolute best ways to fry or cook in, because it has a super high smoke point. Yeah. And so you can buy ghee on our website. But I'll tell you, it's really expensive because of all the, I put it, it's more of like, I tell people it's more like you're giving a donation, and we're sharing a gift with you. Because it's, if you go on Amazon, you can get really good grass-fed ghee too. If you can't afford ours, at least go get some good grass-fed ghee, maybe on Amazon, from a small farm or something, because ours is pretty pricey, but all the money goes to the care of the cows. And I think there's a big difference when the cows get to nurse their babies, and when they have that love in their life, and to know that the cows aren't going to be killed when they're done making milk. They're going to be taken care of for the rest of their life, which is a huge thing. Yeah. And then we also sell, like, I'm adding more every day, but little cow pillows where we put a certain cow's face on a pillow, and then we call them cow cuddle pillows. we haven't sold that many, but people who tell me, like, after they buy it, they're like, "This is so good, I love it."
Oh my God! Well, dude, watching you walk them around on those videos, they do look like really big dogs. Like they have like they have some, like, the way they carry themselves sometimes. You're just like, is that a big dog, or is that a cow?
Yeah, I'd say, and the poop is a little more beneficial than dog poop.
Yeah.
So that's but yeah, so KrishnaCowSanctuary.com, Instagram, Krishna Cow Sanctuary, or Facebook, Krishna Cow Sanctuary. And then our email is thecowsanctuary@gmail.com if anyone wants to get in touch for any reason. But yeah, man, and I encourage everyone to get their own cow if they can. That's the real solution. Get your own cow, take care of it, give it love, and it'll pay exponential dividends. You'll be stoked.
Awesome, man. Well, thank you for taking some time out today to do this, man, and sharing everything that you've been doing over the years. I think it's pretty awesome. I mean, we need examples that we can see of, like, how it can work out better, because the way that it's going right now is just, it's shit.
Yeah, totally, man. And it's people say, "Oh, well, you're only doing one small thing," or, "If I did something, it would only be a little small thing." But hey, that's the way anything changes, is lots of people doing small things,
That's exactly how it changes.
Yeah.
Oh, man. So thank you for doing your small thing.
Yeah, my message to people is whatever you're gonna do your best in your situation. Buy organic, grow your own food if you can, buy local, buy from local farmers, get to know them, get a cow if you can. If you can't, support people who have cows who are treating them right. And just do what you can, and little things add up.
Awesome. Well, that sounds like a perfect place to end this thing. So we're going to get out of here. Hope you enjoyed it, people. See ya.
Yeah.